There's enough in that bunker for all of us to live very comfortably. If we stick to the plan, we should have no trouble at all. If we stick to the plan.
What is up, you beautiful people? It's Kogaras here again, showing you my top 3 tried and perfected starter builds for 3.12 Heist. Now, Heist did bring a lot of unique changes to gems and their alternate quality, and on top of that, replica uniques, which are absolutely cool and, you know, intrigues me and my heart of PoE creation and how to make new build guides. But in terms of patch notes, everything was kind of a lot smaller than what it usually is. There was not a lot of significant changes other than the changes made to curses. Now we have hexes and marks, which act completely different. And, you know, GG just loves to make things a lot more complicated. I think curses were fine the way they were, but hey, I'm not, you know, a game developer, so can't say much in terms of that. But with that, I did take into account all these changes, because even though curses are not the end all or break all of a build, they do count for a change, and that's what I did. So all the POBs are updated for 3.12 and their build guides, because I've made all these builds already in a former guide in their originating league, are down below for you guys to check out if you got more detail on each individual build. Now, with that in mind, there are a lot of build guides that I really want to show you guys, like the Wintertide, and I love that build, the Ice Shot character, and other builds that are like the Caswell Channel, you know, Kitty Cat Missile build. I love that build a lot too. But they're meant to be low life because that's how they get their damage. I'm not going to give you a build that's, you know, not going to function. I can make the build life version, but then the damage will be bad and the survivability might be bad. And then I'm giving you a bad build. I just made it a build that's easy to farm and to get going, but it's going to let you down when you get to end game. I don't want to do that to you guys. So I'm only going to do the 3 builds that I think, you know, you guys can start off realistically and pull off, and then it'll take you all the way to end game and you have fun and it'll be successful with you. So with that in mind, guys, I do stream on Twitch every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm currently working on my Crackling Lance build, and I have a love-hate relationship with the build right now, but the POB got updated and I did update the POB for the gem to see what type of damage I can pull off, and it was sitting at 15 million with a lot of life recovery and a lot of good stuff to it. So I'm happy. I'm very excited. But it comes down to the end of the day of whether the gameplay is worth it. So I'll tell you when I get there, and I'll make probably everything you need to know about Crackling Lance build, or, you know, showcase a little video guide informational. So if you guys like the video, please make sure to leave a like, you know, smash that like button, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and especially if you want to hear more content about a Crackling Lance build. And I'll give you my thoughts on whether it's worthwhile or not. And also, I have a Discord community down below if you guys want to join that. You know, everybody's kind of like learning Heist as we go along. I always give tips and things like that when people are making new builds or when they're using one of mine. So you're more welcome to join the community and have some fun and chill with the gang. So with that, let's move on to the League Start builds. Now, the first build we're going to start off with is my Poison BV character that I made back in Delirium. This character is actually an absolute freaking blasted play. It's one of my favorite builds that I ever made. And I try to make it in that it's defensive enough to be able to tank a lot of things. Like this is the Delirium map and it's just running right through it like it doesn't care. And on top of that, it has really good damage, so it doesn't really sacrifice at any point of the term of defenses and offenses, right? Because usually what people do is they'll usually get like really good damage because Poison BV just insane damage, but the survivability is pretty lackluster with either like barely 5k life and nothing else really. So what I did with this build is I essentially made it a Eldritch Battery character, and then I used that energy shield and combined it with Mind Over Matter to get basically another 1,500 or 2,000. Essentially, I show you a very easy way of doing this. Extra energy shield, that's technically mana, because it is our mana with Eldritch Battery, as extra HP with Mind Over Matter. On top of that, the main problem, honestly, with Poison BV is that a single target's insane, but it's clear it's kind of lackluster. When you do the fixes, you use a Beano's Kitchen Knife. Now, the Beano's Kitchen Knife is basically just spreads your poisons around, and it doesn't have like the most amazing single target, but honestly, you don't even care, because honestly, just the weapons that we use are the daggers that give you +3 to physical gems called Cold Iron Point. They're super cheap. I want to say super cheap early on, but like they're not exalts, you know, they're like a couple chaos. It's honestly incredibly easy to farm, and honestly there's no roll on it, so you don't have to like, you know, find a good roll. You just buy it flat out, so it's very easy to build. Now, the only thing that Beano's by itself is not going to make the build feel really good. People usually combine it with an Explode Chest or using Asenath's Gentle Touch. However, those things are very expensive. So what I did is I used a cluster jewel called Gift, Unspeakable Gifts from the Chaos Cluster, and it gives you 10% chance to explode enemies on kill. You combine 2 of these and you have a 20% chance, and that alone is absolutely amazing because unlike Profane Bloom from the Occultist, they have to be cursed, while if you use the, the jewels, I love using these jewels for the Chaos ones, they do not have to be cursed. They can be killed by anything. So the Plague Bearer, which is that little ring of poison you see around me, that's kind of like a poison righteous fire. It is absolutely amazing because then you build up the stacks when you do poison damage, and you build it up incredibly quick with some of the cool tricks. If you guys watch the video, I'll show you quick on the tree. And with that, you're able to get like the max stacks of Plague Bearer or Virulence, whatever you want to call it, all the way super high. And on top of that, dude, you get so much damage from that, and that alone can literally clear everything in the game. So even if your stacks are not even high, like your Blade Vortex stacks are not 3 or 4 or 5, Plague Bearer alone would easily just devour everything, and those will explode. And the explosion will poison because it is chaos damage, and then, the chain continues with poison BV with the Beanos, and it's insanely good. On top of that, the single target is absolutely disgusting with this build. Not really much has been changed other than like the curses, but we use a Witchfire Brew for our first curse, and then we use Curse Hunted Temp Chains from our gloves, which is really easy to do using because I use the what's it called, the Cyrus gloves that you want to corrupt a lot of times, and just finding one with the Curse 2 Temp Chains is not that expensive because they drop a lot from Cyrus even at low levels and his awakening levels. So this is the awesome starter. I say the only expensive item would be a Devouring Datum. So real quick, I'll show you guys the skill tree. Now, this is a skill tree for the Poison BV character. Not much has really changed, honestly, in this new patch. The only real thing that I have to tell you guys is Herald of Agony, or the Circle of Anguish, and all these Circle synthesized rings were nerfed back in Harvest League, and their buff effect has been reduced. The buff effect for Herald of Agony does give you poison, or chance to poison, which is very, very nice, and that I don't like relying on my flask to get a 100% chance to poison if it ever drops off. So we can easily make up for that with a new node called Serpentine Spellslinger. These 2 nodes give you 25% chance to poison and a lot of damage, and that alone gives you 100% chance to poison without the use of the flask. Very, very nice. On top of that, of course, what I was saying before, the only way we get explosions is Unspeakable Gifts, and all you really want to do is buy a level 8, not level 8, a passive, a level 75 ideally. The higher you might have a higher chance of getting some other mods, so keep it level 75. And you want to alt spam it until you get Unspeakable Gifts. Due to the fact that it's an explosion mod, it's rarer than other mods, but large clusters are honestly not too hard to roll, especially because Unspeakable Gifts is a suffix, so that means you can augment another notable like a Overwhelming Malice, which is very, very nice. But honestly, early on, just focus on getting Unspeakable Gifts, and due to the changes, every large cluster jewel now has 2 jewel sockets, so you're good to go there, and it's very, very nice. As for your medium clusters, nothing's really notable, just get them as you go, and this is really good damage. You can see it in the build guide. But one note, low tolerance is absolutely amazing with Plague Bearer, because low tolerance makes your first poison do a lot of damage, and that first poison will just rank up the Plague Bearer's virulence stacks like through the roof in seconds. You can hit 2 enemies and bam, you have it already maxed out, which is absolutely amazing. Right? On top of that, we do use an item called Devouring Datum. It's probably the only item or unique item in the build, other than, of course, the Circle of Nostalgia, but everybody's buying the Herald of Ash one, so this shouldn't be too expensive. But Devouring Datum is an item from the Betrayal, and it's from the boss, and has a drop from him, or her, I guess. And it's not too rare as a drop, but of course it's going to be expensive because it's highly demanded. And it gives you a lot of reduced mana reservation. So until you get one, because it does give you Eldritch Battery in the item, is use these 3 skill points, get Eldritch Battery, drop some life or something on the tree. Don't worry about the damage, because honestly, we're hitting at 25 million anyway. Don't care. Honestly, you'd be good enough. Pick it up on the tree, drop some damage on the tree. Elsewhere to make up for the points. And then, since we can't fit all the auras, drop some Skitterbots and drop Aspect of the Spider, which would be very easy since you don't really start with Aspect of the Spider. You have to actually go out of your way to get it. And you should have enough mana just with Herald of Agony and Malevolence. Just that alone. And then you don't really need the helmet. You can use whatever helmet you want. Just make sure it has a little bit of energy shield and just life and resistances as you see fit. And that should last you away, and you still have over 22 million damage or 21 million damage, whatever you want to say. And very, very nice. That pretty much covers the helmet. So, of course, you don't really need the helmet. The other unique items are extremely cheap. Hands of the High Templar. You can get an easy one from Sir Cyrus himself. It drops like, candy. And some people out there, or, it's meant to be vault. So you're going to find one with just 10 chains on hit. And that's all you really need. You don't have to worry about the other stuff on it. And then Cold Iron points are extremely cheap. And the flask are nothing like crazy. Adziri's Promise you can get from Adziri. Witchfire Brew drops very commonly. Should drop in price incredibly quick. And Curlitos is the same thing. And that's pretty much it. You can just see fit as you go. Don't get Mind Over Matter until you get Eldritch Battery, but all that is explained in the build guide. And this build's an absolute blast. Now, if you guys don't know, I explained the build guide as well. The way that we get a lot of energy shield very easily, there's one mod crafted up here. It's called gain 10%. It's not called. It's named gain 10% of maximum life as extra maximum energy shield. It only costs 4 chaos to get this, so just go to global 820. Ask somebody looking for this craft right off the craft, of course, and some guy will probably charge you a fee. Excuse me, and you buy it from him. He'll craft it on your chest piece, and boom, that one mod by itself gives you like 1,500 energy shield. It's absolutely insane. So make sure you put this with a Vaal Regalia to get a little bit more energy shield, which is of course mana, and with Mind Over Matter, it's on top of that, it's also life. So it's a very, very good combination. And if you want to survive more, I highly recommend that you get a little bit of chaos resistance. And another cool trick I found out while testing this a while back, after I made the build actually, it's called a shield called Thirst of Horrors. It's the upgraded version of Chalice of Horrors, which is like a crap unique no one buys. And the Mount Furrows probably costs like a chaos. And you can use it instead of a cold iron point, like get a Benos in this for clear, and then for single target, swap the Benos for a cold iron point. And what makes it so amazing is that you have 1% damage leeches life against cursed enemies. Since we have 2 curses, is really good. And it's just flat out damage. So no matter what damage you do, physical chaos, and you then leech it. And since we use the energy shield leech gem because it affects poison, we get energy shield leech, which leeches to our mana, and this shield will then leech to our life. And that was basically the one problem I had with this build, was that even though we had energy shield leech, I didn't have any sort of life recovery. And this shield fixes that for literally dirt cheap, and you get movement speed, right? And a good chance to block, 31% chance to block. So if you want to do like a budget, like survivability build, I highly recommend this shield. It's absolutely amazing, right? So I hope you guys enjoy this build. Let's move on to the next one. Now, moving on to my next character, it's probably going to be my favorite build. Honestly, I just played it again, and I'm like, dude, I just love this build so much, dude. The sound effects for this build sound so effing chunky. Just listen to this. Dude, like, I don't know how to say it, but like, just something so satisfying about war crying, right? And then just going right into a freaking slam with that big behemoth fist of slam and just like completely obliterating. And then the minute you want to go OP and just goes fast as hell, you press Vaal Earthquake and you zoom, bro, with phasing. I don't know, man. There's something so satisfying that build. That build has such great damage now. And not damage now, it had great damage, it still has great damage. And on top of that, it's just so tanky with all the freaking defenses. Glancing Blows was nerfed in that you start taking originally it was 50% of the damage from your blocks, now it's 65%, which makes it honestly hard to use. But this build doesn't even worry about that because it has 100% chance, well, not 100% chance, it has 75% chance to block spells and attacks without glancing blows. So you block the full damage and then you recover it because of surrender. And surrender is a chase unique and it's kind of expensive. There's a cool trick I can show you guys on how to farm one and craft one yourself really easily, that you don't have to waste all the money on a surrender, and now we can just focus on the axe. Is all you really need. Dude, but this build is just absolutely amazing. I can just, just go over it all day. Just, the items are not really required. The only thing that's really expensive would obviously be the axe, the shield. I can show you a trick. And then, of course, the cluster jewels. The problem with the build is that there's not a lot of damage multiplier for bleed on the tree. So you're forced to take it on cluster jewels because it has a plethora of those mods and modifiers everywhere. And you're forced to take them. But other than that, honestly, the bleed is not that expensive. Bleed bow is not... It's still popular and still a very good build, but it's so much fun. And what makes this build so good is that bosses take 3 times the damage when they're moving from bleeds, and bow builds have this advantage where they can use Ensnaring Arrow, because Ensnaring Arrow makes the boss act like it's moving even though it can be standing still, making them take 3 times the bleed damage. And you have to be using a bow to use it. So melee builds kind of hate that, obviously, and they're forced to take Crimson Dance, which you stack 8 bleeds, and that's very hard to do, almost physically impossible to get good damage of Earthquake, because only the aftershock matters, not the initial hit. And I don't want to go down that route, so what I figured out was that if you weapon swap to a bow, you can use a rear guard quiver, which has block on it, so your main source of defense block is still active when you weapon swap. You can hit them with Ensnaring Arrow, ideally using a core rank because that's super fast attack speed, and it debuffs them. And that debuff stays on them even though you weapon swap back to your axe. So you can start a fight, go into the boss fight, slam with your ancestrally boosted slam using your Fist of War and everything. Get that good damage, make sure it's a good bleed with the 60% chance to do 100% more damage, right? And then weapon swap to your bow, hit them with a Ensnaring Arrow, weapon swap back, and you sit there and watch them just bleed the hell out and they're dead. And dude, the damage is great. The the satisfaction is just amazing, from the bleed pops to the slams, and especially if you have the crystal earthquake effect. I'm done. Moving on to the tree. I can go over this build all day. Now, moving on to the tree, honestly, it's a very simple tree. Now, the jewel tree is probably more expensive, obviously, for obvious reasons. Jewels are kind of expensive. So for that very reason, I will link a, non-cluster tree, just like I did in my original video. But you can go watch the original video if you guys want more detail. And the same links are going to be down there as well. Right? So this is basically the tree. It's just your generic. It's just a lot of block, a lot of fizz damage to attacks, bleed modifiers, and then we do take nodes like this to give endurance charges, a lot more bleed damage, a lot of life, right? And everything's based on axes. We do take RT, so you don't have to worry about, accuracy problems. You don't have to, worry about that, those issues that make your build more expensive because you have to get accuracy. There's no crit in this. Your sword or your axe, the only damage thing you have to worry about is the 60% chance to do 100% more damage. You don't need crit. And, what you can do is while you're leveling, you can just use the recipe that gives you, kind of like a blue or rare axe, depending on what you pick. It's going to be a blue axe no matter what, actually. And it gives you a little bit of fizz damage. And what you have to do is sell an axe or any weapon, of course. But since we're building axes, let's focus on that. And what you do is you sell it with a blue or rare rustic sash and a blacksmith whetstone. And you back that same weapon that was white. It turns into a blue with a fizz modifier on it. And if you use a blue rustic sash, it's like a 40 something to 49. And if you use a rare, it goes up to like 60 to 69 or 70% around there. And that's really good to level up with, and that should be clear just fine as you level up with. But of course, a lot of unique items you can use, like Jack the Axe and whatever unique axe you want to use. Honestly, as long as it has really good fizz, you're good to use it. But nothing will beat a rare with the 60% chance to do 100% more damage. If you want to know how to roll that, please watch the video. But essentially, you have to roll it from an Elder Axe, and that's kind of hard to do. And you can use falsos to your advantage, but it's still pretty hard to do. And but until you get there, you can just use whatever you need. But essentially, these are the cluster jewels. And what makes them so expensive is that you see this 12% damage to deal damage over time multiplier for bleeding. That doesn't exist on the tree. Like, for some reason, damage over time multiplier for bleeding does not exist on the tree. If it does, it's rare. Because I have made this build a while ago and I don't remember where they are now. But you have to take them from here. And we do build a lot into, how would you say, damage duration, bleed duration. So even though it says 18 million, that's the damage per bleed. Our bleed DPS is around 2 million. It goes up to 3 million because it's high and lows. You gotta remember with all the mods in this damn build, they can go up or low, right? So if you do get the top end, it's probably gonna be around 3 to 4 million, something stupid number like that, right? So really, the bulk of the expense comes from the cluster jewels. The large cluster jewels, actually, you can be whatever you want. I use shield notes because they're very cheap and they're very nice. So I say, why not? But the rest is just life and damage, guys. As for your items, your siege axe is going to be the most expensive thing. You just want to roll, try to get that 60% chance to deal 100% damage. But you can just use a fizz axe of a unique until you get there. For surrender, the cool trick that you can use is you can go and buy a shield that's a warlord modifier, a warlord shield. And if it's eye level 60 or higher, you can get recovered 3 to 5% of life when you block. Now, if you look at surrender real quick, it does say recover 250 life on block. If you do the math, if you do 5% and you say you have 5k life, let's say like 5,200 life. Right, but keep it low because we're around there. 5% of that, it's 206. So it's roughly the same thing. 4%, but probably get you there. But like, try to get the 5%. And just that alone, and all you really need is this shield. So it has to be a warlord to get armor. Of course, you want armor. Armor shield, eye level 68 or higher. Of course, the higher eye level is better because you get more life and more resistance. But get it with life and some res, and you're good to go. Just alt spam it until you get it. And that should cover your surrender until you get a surrender. And that's all you really need. As for that, the only other expensive item probably be a Rislata's Coil. Simply being, it gives you that higher max damage. Lower min, but higher max for that insane bleed that you get at times. And it has a lot of fizz and some life. It's really good, but it's not required at all. You can just use a Synthesis Vise. Synthesis, what am I saying? A Stygian Vise with a Abyssal Socket and just use like flat fizz and life and whatever you want. Right? Things like that. For the time being, and then other than that, the Circle of Guilt, but that is not too expensive because I always use mana reservation with buff effect. I never go double damage because they're overly priced, so I never do it anyway. And the rest of it is just really easy to use, bro. You got Astral Plates with life. Socketed attacks have minus missing mana cost. You don't really need this, but it does come in handy. If you have mana problems, you drop an aura, right? We do use a lot of auras here. So if you have mana problems, try to get like minus mana cost on your Ami or on your rings like I have here, right? But you really just want to do that if you can't buy a chest piece like this. But if anything, is of course, you can go into your warlord modifiers here. Go for chest. This is PvDB if you guys don't know about it, right? Go to strength, body armor, and If you see here, go to Crusade or Warlord, I mean. And right there, where is it? Socket to have minus 15 mana cost. I level 85. So it's going to be really hard to get early on, but minus 9 mana cost should take you just fine, honestly, especially with everything. And the harvest buffs added so many buffs to this build in terms of AoE. His main downside was that its AoE was bad, but now that we have Fist of War and Seismic Cry, is just like a complete 180. The one downside become a major upside, and holy hell is the sounds, just the impact just feels so good, you know. Builds with good sound quality are like the most funnest builds, I think. Right, and that's pretty much it, guys. So if you guys have any questions on this build, just let me know. But this build's absolutely fantastic. The non-cluster jewel tree will also be down there for you guys to check out, but keep in mind it's much less damage than this one. You'd be very surprised the difference. So start out with that one and then build into this one. This is what you really want to go for. Let's move on. Moving on to the next build is going to be my Tectonic Slam Onigoroshi Chieftain. It's actually a very, very fun build to play. It's not too expensive because I even use a Carcass Jack as my 5-link for my chest piece. And, you know, Onigoroshi comes 6-link, so that's what I used. And that's all I really need. And there's of course, some expensive items, but that's due to harvest and it's absolutely not required. It has amazing clear speed. And the only real downside is the damage for single target. It's not like too amazing. It needs a little bit of investment. But going through your awakening levels early on, you should be a-okay because Onigoroshi does give you a lot of damage very easily early on. So I see no problems with that. And the build's actually super fun. And I'll go over some of the expensive items and how you can just downgrade them. Honestly, they're not really necessary. You know, you can thank harvest for that, making everything super expensive. But it's a lot of fun. I really like the build. And of course, unique item Onigoroshi is my favorite unique item in the game. So I love playing around with it, and I'm gonna definitely make some more of those. So let's see what you guys think about this one. We'll go over into the skill tree and show you some cool tricks and show you what's gonna be expensive so you guys know what to look forward to in terms of how to invest into this character. So here we are for the Tectonic Slam POB and the skill tree. Now this one honestly is nothing too complicated, just life, a lot of fire damage, you know, of course, endurance charges, because endurance charges do scale with Tectonic Slam and Chieftain. It gives a lot of regen due to that and offsets the degen from the sword that it gives you. A little bit more detail on that on the build guide itself, right? And honestly, the only jewels that we use are 2 Thread of Hopes here, which of course can drop from Cyrus himself. They're not going to be too expensive. Obviously, the lower the res, the more expensive they are, but they're not necessary. You can get them later and you can just spec into it instead of having the jewel itself. There's nothing too big there. And this one's completely like optional, the one over here, right? And of course, these little cluster jewels, they're absolutely not necessary. These are just AoE nodes, you know, classic to fast AF. I don't want to say the word, right? And they're not really necessary. You can just take them out and just put the jewel socket, the murder side jewel, because it does scale a lot of abyss jewels, because abyss jewels give you a lot of physical flat damage, and that's really important for Onigoroshi. Right? The only thing that's kind of necessary, and I would say it's really necessary, is Feed the Fury and Feel the Fight. Well, not Feed the Fury, excuse me, Feel the Fight and Martial Prowess. This allows you to, you know, cap your accuracy. Well, the more important one is Feel the Fight, because that gives you leech on, you know, from your attack damage. We do have life leech from Chieftain himself, so we don't need that. That's why Feed the Fury is not needed. But Feel the Fight is necessary for mana leech. But until then, you can, of course, just travel up here, waste 2 points, and get mana leech on the right side of the tree, and you're good enough for that anyway. So even this, you can say, is not really required. But just so you guys know, if you need mana leech, just go over here and get it. It's not too big of a deal. But I do this because I wanted to get the AoE from these 2 little AoE nodes just for fun. Not really necessary, just a fun thing to do, right? And that's pretty much the gist of the expense. I'll go over the gear real quick. And as a Chieftain, you get a lot of survivability. Tesalio gives you insane amount of recovery, especially with the Sword of Our Colleague giving you 50% increased recovery rate if you stop taking damage over time recently. And since the sword is a damage over time, last 3 seconds, once that disappears, that and that combines is like 100% increased recovery rate. And then you combine that with the 40% increased recovery rate from Leech. You get some juicy recovery rate on top of Enduring Cry and everything else, right? As for the items, of course, Onigoroshi, that's pretty much it. Carcass Jack, very easy to farm. Circle of Guilt is probably like one of the more expensive items, but of course, like I always say, I always get mana reservation and buff effect. I don't really go for double damage. I don't see it worthwhile. As for Miami looks absolutely disgusting. You can thank Harvest for that. Just get at least a little bit of Fizz, Crit Multi, and Life. After the Spider, you can proc it in once you have enough mana. But that you buy from the market. It usually costs around 15 to 20 chaos. But you can do that way later into the game. You know, right now, people are not really farming for the Venomous First of the Night, which is the item you need in order to get Aspect of the Spider. Otherwise than that, the only thing that makes this Ami really stick out to me is the fact that it has like tier 1 life and tier 1 accuracy. The accuracy you can take out and then just put them into your abyssal sockets, and that should cover it. You only need 2 abyssal sockets with 200 accuracy plus, which are not very expensive because people don't look for accuracy in jewel sockets, and it should cover this, and you should be good to go. And honestly, don't worry too much about getting your accuracy capped to 100% early on. Worry about that once you're trying to like get the gear up to, you know, awakening level 8 and things like that. That's where things really start to matter. Right, but otherwise, the rest of it, it's not too expensive. The boots, you don't need tailwind. If you can get it, good for you. But, you know, of course, I craft this in harvest. And same with the belt. Belt, just get life resistances. And then just craft wed from the bench. You don't have to worry about all that damage I have in there. As for you seeing this bottle faith here, you don't need the bottle faith. What I recommend is just use a chest piece with either crit to make it up if you feel like your crit's not stacking up to it. But honestly, it should be fine either way. Or what you can do is you can use a wise oak. And a wise oak is good enough either way just by itself because it gives you 52% pen and the damage potential is like it's like slightly below, you know. For the expense, it's not that much better. I just like bottle faith because it's a better option. But you know, wise oak should be good enough anyways, and it's a lot cheaper. So go ahead and use that with a lion's roar and a cinder swallow. You should be good to go. Cinder swallow is another item that'll be kind of expensive. Just use a silver flask until then, and that's pretty much the unique items. The rest of it just rares and craft as you go, guys. And yeah, so I highly recommend just use any unique item like On's Might, Scava, things with like naturally a high chance to crit and attack speed with a decent amount of fizz. And that should take you along the way until you know, get to farm your first Onigoroshi. It shouldn't be too expensive, right? Shouldn't take you too long. And on the topic of the Onigoroshi, real quick, guys, I just finished streaming today for my Crackling Lance characters, done a lot of progress. And Onigoroshis are literally selling for an Exalt. And I literally got an Exalt from a drop, like really while leveling. I was super lucky. That alone would allow me to buy an Onigoroshi, which is a 6-link, which is absolutely amazing because the 6-link that I would need for my build will cost me around 6 Exalts. So Onigoroshi is very easy to start off with. You know, it's not that hard to farm. And yes, I did get lucky with an Exalt, but I did manage to already farm like 40 to 60 Chaos between Chaos Recipe and finding some rares here and there. You know, and anything else, especially from the Heist, a lot of Chaos drops from those little chests that you do. So it's not hard, guys. I believe in you. Exalts are only around 80 Chaos right now, but they are going up as per usual, as they always do. So with that, I'm a little bit exhausted from the stream, so I'll leave you guys with that as the end of the video. These are all my league starters, and look forward to my Crackling Lands build update very soon. I hope you guys enjoy that one too. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you guys want more content like this. And with that, I hope you guys enjoy Heist, and I'll catch you in the next video, or informative build guide, I guess. See you guys later.